Hello there and welcome to episode 50 of Little Big Knits. This is a podcast primarily about knitting and my name is Selma. I'm your host. I'm coming to you from Ottawa here in Canada where I live with my family and our cat Yoda, and we are having a beautiful, beautiful June day. I've left the back door open for some fresh air before we shut things down for the day because we don't have air conditioning. So if you hear some outside noises, it'll probably be coming from there. Yeah, so this is episode 50, and as promised last time, there will be a little bit of a question and answer segment towards the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for all your questions. I thought what I would do would be to answer some today and then some next time, and if there's still some left over, some the time after that. And if something occurs to you that you'd like to ask, feel free to put it in the comments below and I'll answer it next time or the time after that. So it's been a while since I last podcasted, or should I say it's been a while since my last knitting confession. I checked on the calendar yesterday. I last podcasted April 26th. I usually podcast at least once a month, about every 3 weeks, but as you'll recall from last time, life was a little bit intense with my mother being in the hospital, and that took up a lot of my energy over about a month and a half that she was in the hospital, and then she was in rehab, and there were a lot of conversations with occupational therapists and social workers and doctors and all kinds of medical people, as well as retirement homes, because I ended up having to move my mother to a new retirement home. So it was a little bit intense, and honestly after that I was exhausted and needed some quiet recoup time, and yeah, I got a little, I don't know what they call it, caregiver burnout, but I'm all right now. I just needed to be quiet for a little while. And then I actually had hoped to podcast last time, but I got my, or last weekend I should say, but I got my vaccine on the Thursday before, my second shot of the COVID vaccine, and I was flat afterwards. I was absolutely exhausted and I had a headache. I didn't have a fever, but I was just really, really tired. So yeah, so here we are 7 weeks later. And just quickly to report, my mother's doing great in the new place. It's been actually a relatively easy integration, and I visit her 2 or 3 times a week, and we have a family friend who's also allowed to visit her 2 or 3 times a week, or whenever. So he goes a couple of times a week and I go a couple of times a week or 3, and she gets lots of visits that way. So here I am after all this time, and the episode is aptly called the sock explosion, because you're going to see there are a lot of socks in my life. I think that was the kind of knitting I needed during the time that my mom was in the hospital, just completely mindless. So I was just churning out socks. And yeah, so before we get into the knitting, just a quick reminder, we're actually in the home stretch of the Color Play Cal. I'm quite sure, actually I forgot to check before I started recording, that we are finishing this Cal on July 1st. So I'll have to, if I'm wrong, I'll put that down here, what the actual day is. And so that day will be the last day to put in any projects into the finished object thread that are related to the Color Play Cal. So anything to do with color work, whether it be intarsia or mosaic or stranded, brioche. So we talked about those things. Stripes are not supposed to be part of this cal. Yeah, it's been really, really great. Now I have to say that right now my color play desires have completely diminished and been replaced by desires for texture, actually, and I'll show you one of my works in progress a little bit later related to that. The other cal that I announced last time, and I really didn't expect it to take off the way it did, was an informal knit along around the Ranunculus sweater by Midori Hirose. So people got so excited about that. I just thought there'd be a few of us getting excited about it, but it seems like lots of you have made more than one, lots of you have wanted to make it, and some of you were even convinced that perhaps you should. So it's been great fun. That one is an informal cal. I'm not sure there'll be prizes. The chat and the finished objects are all in the same thread. So if you want to come along and join in the knit along fun with the Ranunculus, please join us there in the group on Ravelry, Little Big Knits group, or you can also post on Instagram, and I am reposting the finished objects in my stories. So we're just having fun with that. And honestly, I've been inspired by so many beautiful Ranunculus sweaters that I've got more in my mind. We'll see how many. I'm going to show you something a little later that I've been swatching and not being able to decide what to do with it. And I'm actually thinking, Ranunculus? We'll see. Anyway, so there we go. Let's get on with the knitting. Actually, before I get on with the knitting, I just wanted to do a quick little look at my little setup. When I was cleaning out my mother's room at the retirement home that she moved out of, there were a lot of things that she wouldn't be taking to her new place. There were some pictures of our family in Finland, my great-grandparents, as well as my grandmother when she was a kid. But there were a couple of items here, and there's some peonies from the garden, which are really beautiful. But this doll, which is now falling apart, is actually a doll that my mother made when she was a teenager. So this doll has been kicking around for a long time, and she made this with the dress and everything sewn together, and the fabric is finally starting to give way there. But this little doll, which has an earring, I think it was meant to be kind of like a gypsy type of person, has been kicking around for, gosh, a good 60 years. And she had it in her room, and I just wanted to bring it home because I've always loved this doll. It's so adorable. So that's been sitting there, kind of holding court every once in a while. So yeah, all right, we're gonna get on with the knitting. I am again drinking tea out of my wonderful Knit Swag mug that Kelly gifted me, and I just love so much. And I'm gonna show you something else that she sent me as well. So let's start with the finished objects. This is not the first pair. As I said, I'm gonna start with the socks, and then I'll show you my last Ranunculus at the end. So you'll recall last time that I showed you a stunning skein of yarn from Night Owl Fibers that Rachel had sent me, called the Life and Death Brigade, which was related to Gilmore Girls. And this is one of her Gilmore Girls colorways. And I couldn't put this pair down until it was finished. I so enjoyed knitting with this. Self-striping yarn is always a pleasure, but the colors in this are so beautiful and rich. and it's a lovely quality of yarn. And I just absolutely loved making this pair of socks. They just flew off. I was definitely knitting these when my mom was in the hospital. I remember visiting her in rehab and knitting on these. She was still quite tired and sleeping quite a bit. And even when she was awake, we'd just sit there and chat, or I'd put on some music and we would, and I'd be knitting, and she would love to look at them, and was thrilled herself with the colors in this pair of socks. So anyway, just beautiful yarn, Rachel. Thank you so much for letting me try it out. Obviously now we're in pretty hot weather here in Ottawa, so I'm unlikely to wear these until next fall, but I'm very much looking forward to wearing them. Of course, the socks will all be displayed on these wonderful sock blockers by P4 Chen Patricia, also known as Knitography, who has a wonderful shop with lots of birch items in there, as well as some yarn that she sells from Norway. So anyway, these socks actually I made top down. I have seemed to have gotten into the top down bug, which is kind of fun. It's really nice. I've gotten so used to making them top down that I don't even have to look at the pattern or the recipe anymore for the heel flap and gusset. It's really quite easy and lots of fun, and quite easy also to adapt to 60 or 64 stitches. The original one that I used for my Dreaming of Spring socks, which I'll show you next, that was the first pair that I made, and this was the second. And I think I quickly glanced at the pattern, but then just had it. And these ones, even though the Dreaming of Spring is a 64 stitch pattern, these were a 60, and I was able to adapt it really easily, and it was just really great. I've gotten used to doing the Kitcheners as well. I find there tends to be a little bit, I don't know if other people find this, with the Kitchener, rather than the toe up, there tends to be a little dimple on the two sides of the Kitchener, and I know that there's a technique for improving on that, so I have to look that up. But yeah, that is sock number 1. Socks number 2, which are really socks number 1 because these are the ones that I finished first, are the Dreaming of Spring socks by Olivia Villarreal, also known as This Handmade Life. And she is a prolific and wonderful sock designer. And I think I had almost finished these the last time I podcasted. It's a beautiful sort of feather and fan. Sorry, these were folded up in the sock basket, because I have a basket, not a drawer. And these were also a top-down pattern, the first one that really paved the way for my top-down sock knitting experience. And this was just a really lovely pattern, I have to say, just very enjoyable. I made it out of Woolly Mammoth yarns in her natural sock, and a colorway called Jasmine, which is a very light blush pink. And yeah, I'm curious to see how this wears. It's a very different feeling, I have to say, from the superwash yarn. It's got a bit of a crispness to it. And these will be a hand wash sock because it is not superwash, it's a natural sock. So yeah, but just lovely, very pretty. I must say, I put these on my feet and I was like, these are so pretty. Again, I'm not going to get much of a chance to wear them until the fall, but for now I get to look at them. But yeah, lovely pattern, lovely yarn combo for a very delicate pair of socks, or delicate looking. We'll see how the yarn wears. So that is sock number 2. Sock number 3, geez, I don't even remember which one was number 3 and which one was number 4. I had made myself a pair of socks last summer out of a wool bamboo blend. I made the Mercury socks, and I really enjoyed wearing those socks last summer a lot. Now, I didn't wear them during the day, but if it was a slightly cool night, they were a nice pair of socks to put on because they were not as warm as a full wool sock. And they held up incredibly well. So I was really quite impressed by the wool bamboo combination. It was rather high percentage of bamboo in it. I think it was 40% or so bamboo. Really beautiful sheen and really quite strong. Like I thought, okay, these are going to start showing wear after a few wears, and they really haven't. They're in great shape. I also made my first pair of shorties when I tested the Georgia sock pattern by Tracy Miller, and I realized how fun it is to have shorties. And I did wear them last summer. However, those ones were made with a merino cashmere nylon blend, and so definitely warmer. So I thought I'd really like to have some summer fiber shorty socks. So I got myself from the Unraveled store that we have in Perth. It's a yarn store called Unraveled in Perth, and it's a nice little shop, and they provide free shipping, by the way. So you might want to check it out, especially here in Canada. I don't know if they provide free shipping to the States. They may, and probably not the rest of the world. But if you're in Canada and the States, you might want to check them out. But I got this Regia cotton tutti frutti yarn from that shop, and it is I think it's mostly cotton. It's a 72% cotton, 18% polyamide, and 10% polyester. So it's not 100% cotton, but it is meant to be a sock yarn, and I just loved this colorway. So yeah, I really enjoyed making these socks a lot. And because they're shorties, I think I probably have enough. I haven't actually weighed them, but I suspect I have enough for a second pair of shorties. And I may make a pair for somebody else, or keep it for when these ones one day wear out. Or if somebody wants them, perhaps I'll give them to them. But yeah, so I actually started these from the top down. And these are also a 60 stitch sock. And I did a little bit of a different detail in the heel where I didn't do a slip stitch. I did it just stockinette, but I did do 3 garter stitches on each side, and then the gusset. And what I did with this actually is I did a twisted rib, which is funny because I'm not a huge twisted rib fan, but I did do a twisted rib here, but I cast on 56 stitches, because the one thing I noticed with my other shorties was that they were a little bit loose here. Not that I want them to be tight, but I wanted them to be a little bit snugger. So I did 56, and then in the first row of the stockinette, I increased 4 stitches to 60. And I find they really sit nicely on the ankle. I did do a little bit of knitting, so they're not right at the heel before I started the heel, and then just went down to the toe. So pair number 3. Really enjoyed this yarn. I do expect to wear these this summer on cooler evenings. So let's see how they wear. I really hope they wear well, because I really love this idea of perhaps having some cotton ones. The other pair I made was also a summer fiber. This is King Cole summer socks, and I also got these from the Unraveled store in Perth. These ones I knit toe up rather than cuff down. I've been calling them top down. I hope you know what I mean. And really, really fun as well. So this is the King Cole summer socks, and so this one is a, what was the blend? There was bamboo in here for sure. but I can't remember what the remainder was. I think it was a wool bamboo blend. I'll put it down here. So it's got a little, the same as the ones I made last year. There's a bit of a slinkiness to the yarn because of the bamboo. So we'll see how these wear. So this yarn was great. As I said, it's got a bit of a slinkiness to it. However, what was weird was that even though I started at pretty much the exact spot at the toe, like there's one extra pink stripe on this one, but you know, very minimal difference. By the time I got to the heel, there was a rather large difference. So this one ended in the beige, whereas the other one ended in quite a bit of blue. So that was, I had made them so that they would be the same. And then the spot that's actually going to show over the shoe is different. It's not the end of the world, but so there was a little bit of inconsistency there. There was also a lot of knots in this yarn, whereas I'm pretty sure in the Regia it was pretty darn perfect. Yeah, there were little knots actually throughout. So we'll see how these hold up. I hope that the knots don't unravel. Yeah, we'll see how they work out. But this was a little bit inconsistent in terms of the lengths of the stripes and the color changes. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to wearing these this summer as well. So that was number 4. And there's a number 5. I think my sock mojo has now slowed down. I'm really, really enjoying knitting sweaters right now, but I think the sock mojo was great during a time where I kind of needed just very simple knitting, and this is exactly what all of these provided for me. So it was great that way. And my last pair is this pair. So this is the Mondim yarn by Retrosaria Pomar. So this is also a natural sock yarn, and these will be washed by hand as well. I had this skein for a while. It was actually in my big bag full of skeins that I just picked out. And so this was what came out. I hadn't picked things out of that bag for a while because the other socks, the Night Owl fibers and the 2 summer socks, were ones that I'd recently purchased and just cast on. So I reached in and grabbed this yarn, which came with a ball of this sort of very dark charcoal gray, which was the Regia Premium Merino Yak yarn that I had made some socks out of last year. And so I used some of the leftovers for the heels, the toes, and these stripes up here. And yeah, no, these turned out great. Although the other socks were all 60 stitches, these ones ended up being 64. I don't know why I decided to make them 64. I had this sense that they might be a little bit snugger, and it turned out so. And then we'll also see what happens to them as I wash them. So yeah, just a very simple. These ones I also did cuff down. I did a 2x2 ribbing on these ones, and I did the stripe. I have to say, not a very good striper there. So I didn't even try to do the jogless stripe. I just went along and thought, whatever, it is what it is. And yeah, so I really, really like this yarn actually. And it's got it also kind of like the Woolly Mammoth yarn. It's got a different feeling because it's non-superwash, that it's got a very woolly feeling. I'm really looking forward to trying these as well to see what kind of warmth they provide compared to the superwash yarns. So we'll see. So that is 5 pairs of socks in the last 7 weeks. Well, the Dreaming of Spring socks I had started, but about 4 pairs of socks in the last 7 weeks that I started and finished and knit like a demon. Last finished object that I have for you today, and it was already very well on its way last time, is my 4th Ranunculus. Oh, look at this color. Isn't it stunning? So this is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose, or Knit Midori Cafe, House of Midori. There are a few names for her sort of shop, so to speak. And she's designed many sweaters, by the way, this only being one, and does tend to have quite whimsical designs. Actually, she just came out with one this week called the Tulip Sweater, which is a bit of a Gansey style, and it's very beautiful. I was sort of contemplating it, as I contemplate so many other sweaters as well. And I just realized I forgot to tell you what I'm wearing, so I'll do that in a minute. So this is the one that we are having the knit along for. This is my 4th one, and probably my most woolly one. I knit this one out of yarn Josephine base, the Josephine base by Emilia and Philomene, which is a Quebec yarn dyeing company, and it is a non-superwash yarn. So the other ones I've used either lighter or superwash yarns for them, and this one is a non-superwash base, as well as some mohair. So this one I think is going to be sort of a warmer sweater compared to the other 3 that I have made. And do I dare try it on? I'm afraid that I'm going to overheat. What I'll do is add a couple of pictures here of me wearing it, and then you'll probably see it at a future episode. But it really did turn out beautifully. I made long sleeves with the I-cord edging. There's an option in the pattern to do short rows down here to create a bit of a bell, a bit of kind of like a, what would you call that? A bit of a bell shaping to the sleeve at the bottom. I've never actually done it. I just go down and I just do an I-cord edge at the end of it. There are other things that I don't do in this sweater. The sweater actually has a twisted rib at the top and the bottom of the sweater. And as I said, I'm not a huge fan of twisted ribs, so I haven't actually put it in the sweater. It also has a tubular cast on, which I do not do either. I just do a regular long tail cast on. And then I don't do the shaping down here. I also make it, geez, what is the length I make? I think I make it about 10 inches, and which is a bit longer than in the pattern. So, you know, some people make it to the pattern, but you really should make it to the length that you want, because it's very easy to modify. And I found that the long sleeve version takes about almost 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn. There's the option, of course, of doing 1 skein and making it just a short little crop with no sleeves, essentially. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. The color is so stunning, and it's lovely. And I have still been contemplating making one for a friend of mine, and I'm thinking of getting her the yarn and doing that relatively soon. It was just her birthday, so I was like, okay, this will be kind of like a belated birthday present for you. So that's another ranunculus that might be on the needles in the near future. So before we go on to my works in progress and the rest of the podcast, I'll just tell you what I'm wearing. This is the EDT by Isabel Kramer. I made this using the fiber company Meadow yarn, which is a beautiful sort of light fingering yarn that has got some linen in it, and it creates this slightly heathered look to it. And this is just a lovely little t-shirt. It's got a little bit of texturing happening here and there. I don't know if you can see that. There, you can see it. And it's just a nice little t-shirt. I can wear this when it's warm, but not too warm. As soon as it's too warm, I just can't wear any wool. This is a wool blend with different fibers. I think it's wool silk and alpaca. But it is a nice top for a, drier, warm day. Ottawa can be very humid. So even though it says 24, it might feel like 30. So the humidity adds a heaviness and it really makes it difficult to wear wool. So if it's warm and dry, then it's definitely easier to wear wool in the summer, but not the best in our climate because it does tend to be so humid here. So yeah, and I don't remember what this colorway was called. I think it was bergamot. And yeah, just a very, very lovely, simple summer t-shirt design this Edie is. I could see myself making another one in the future because it's really it sits quite nicely. It's a nice V and it's just quite an easy t-shirt to wear. So there you go. That's what I'm wearing today. All right, so what am I working on? Well, I'm going to show you the first thing and the thing that's taking up the majority of my attention these days, which is from this Making Stories, which is starting to show its wear because I carry this all over the place. I don't anymore because now I don't really need to, but I am making the pattern that's here on the cover called the Bindweed, which is designed by Xenia, what was her last name? Xenia Nedion. And it is using Knitting for Olive yarns, and it's really a stunning design. I absolutely fell in love with it when I first bought it, and I think I mentioned to you last time that I've never bought Making Stories, but I absolutely needed to buy it for that one, as well as some other patterns in here that are so beautiful. I really like this one here, which is a sort of a simple sweater with a cable feature on the sleeves. Another cable feature on the sleeves because the Bindweed is like that as well. I really like that one a lot. And then there's another sweater here which I really like as well, which has some cabling on the body and plain sleeves and is more of a drop shoulder construction. So just beautiful patterns in here. Those are the sweaters that I really love, but there are some lovely accessories as well, like these fingerless gloves are really beautiful. So I am making the Bindweed, and I'm almost finished actually. I told you last time that I was going to change my yarn because I had thought that I would make it in the Harbor colorway in the Alley Cat yarns that I'd gotten, but I realized that it was a little bit too thick and so the fabric was going to be a little bit dense. So I ended up buying the Knitting for Olive yarn that is meant for the pattern. So this is the Knitting for Olive Merino, and this is the Knitting for Olive Mohair. Aren't those pretty? And this is the Purple Artichoke colorway, which is this lovely mauve color. It's just beautiful, and the luminescence on the mohair is so beautiful. So I bought this to make the sweater, and I am actually on my second sleeve. The body took very little time. What is taking time is actually the sleeves on this. I finished the first sleeve this week. So I'll try this on so you can see what it looks like. At least the one side. So this is going to be a folded over edge down here. And I haven't sewn it up yet because I'm not 100% sure if this is going to be the length that I want it to be. I might make it a tiny bit longer. And I hadn't bought quite enough yarn, so I actually ordered a little more. But it's just going to be this beautiful little cardigan, sort of cropped cardigan with an amazing sleeve detail. Just beautiful. And I'm very excited about this. I think this is going to be wonderful. Again, it's going to be too warm to wear this summer. I'm usually knitting summer garments by this point in plant-based fibers, and it hasn't happened yet. And I don't want to stop doing this because I gotta say that the cables and the baubles are starting to get a little tedious on the second sleeve, and I don't want to end up with second sleeve syndrome. So I'm just going to keep on going. I am a part way down the sleeve, and the setup of the first sleeve took a lot of energy out of me, but I have that much left. It's not too bad. So I've been, and it's become TV knitting at this point. I've got it completely memorized to the point where I keep making mistakes actually, because I just go along and then I realize, oh, I forgot to do the cables on this row. So yeah, this was a stunning design, and I've really enjoyed knitting this. The setup for this sweater, because it is top down, I would say is probably the most complex part of it. Cables, getting used to them is really not hard. Cables are not particularly difficult. They're just a little bit slow, as are baubles, and in my view, a little tedious, but they're not particularly difficult. But it does take a lot of row counting and knowing where you are in a pattern. But in the setup of this cardigan, you're setting up this pattern motif as well as this pattern motif. And you're starting with a little tab at the top and then picking up stitches. So the cast on for this is a little bit of challenging. I would not call this an easy pattern per se, but then once you get into the rhythm of it, it really is a lovely pattern. Lovely pattern. I'm absolutely in love with this, and I think it'll be lovely with, you know, just a t-shirt and a pair of pants. And I think it's the kind of thing that you could dress up or dress down, and it's just so beautiful, and I absolutely love the color. So this is a very enjoyable knit. It's being knit on 4mm needles, and I'm actually thinking about making my friend's Ranunculus in this color. I think this would be a beautiful color for her. I have to see her and put this against her, but I think she would really like that. And if she decides that she doesn't like it, then I'll make her a different color. But yeah, that's been a really, really enjoyable knit. I am starting to get to the point where I wish I could just finish it quick, so that I can move on to something else. That kind of feeling that you get with, I find, like most sweaters, right? As you get towards the end, you're just itching to finish it and cast on something else. But it really has been enjoyable. I've loved the yarn. In fact, I'm really sold on knitting for olive yarns. I was watching, I usually watch Sari Nordland, who designed the Lumme sweater that I showed you last time, I think. I watch her podcast and have been watching her sort of designing career since she started podcasting. And she loves knitting for olive yarns, and has used their 100% silk base, and I'm really contemplating getting myself some of that at some point. But very nice, and they have really beautiful colors. It's all about subtlety, I have to say. Just really, really wonderful, sort of muted but still rich colors. So very, very nice. And this is being housed in my bucket bag by Buku, Aruna, and who's out of Toronto and has beautiful bags I absolutely love. So that is my main work in progress. When I finished the Mondim socks, I reached into my bag, and that is all part of the Lucky Dip Cal that my friend Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage Craft podcast is hosting. So the idea is that you put a bunch of skeins of, single skeins. I don't think they have to be sock yarn per se. And you randomly pull one out once a month and knit something out of it. I haven't been following it once a month, but when I finish socks, a pair of socks, I usually go in and have Alejandro pull out another one. So the one that got pulled out this time and that I'm knitting, although I have to say they've been put aside a little bit, is out of this very lovely yarn that Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage Craft had given to me, I think on her first trip to Canada. And this is yarn by Fine Fish Yarns. Terry, who is also an Irish person and dyes in Ireland. I think she's slowed down on her dyeing. I'm not 100% sure, but she's always had wonderful yarn. And this is the Manta colorway. So I am knitting the socks called Vanilla is the New Black, which is a pattern by a local designer, Anna Fletcher. And it is an interesting construction. So she has designed this to be either toe up or cuff down, but there is an interesting sort of triangular heel with an also unusual gusset construction. And I've gotten to the point where I have to start the gusset, and this sort of got put on hold as I dealt with the cardigan. But I want to get into this soon and finish the first sock because I'm so interested to see what that sock will look like, because it's a very different construction to other socks that and sort of heel gusset constructions that I've used. So I'm knitting these Magic Loop on 2.25 millimeter needles, which is my standard. And yeah, so that is coming along. I'll show you the actual skein. Just a wonderful, wonderful speckled goodness. And this one is being housed in the bag that Kate had made for those of us who attended the Ullin retreat with her and Emma of Woolly Mammoth Fibers. So there you go. Now the last thing that I have on my needles is sort of a reknit. So I think when I showed you the Lumis sweater, I told you that I wasn't sure that I would keep it, that I thought it could be really great for a friend of mine. And my friend tried it on and it looked perfect on her. It suited her and fit her rather so much better than it did me. The sleeves, which were too long for me, fit her perfectly fine. The only problem was the body was a little short. So I unraveled it and am re-knitting a little bit more length to the body before I go into the ribbing. And I had done short row shaping the first time around, and we agreed that I wouldn't do short row shaping the second time around. So I'm actually just about to start the ribbing. I just have to do it, and then it'll be finished, and I can give it to her, and then hopefully cast myself one on, I don't know when, sometime soon, because I really, really love this. I showed this to you guys last time. So incredibly beautiful, the color work on here. So yeah, I'm just working on that, and I just have this actually in a tote bag that I have here, which is out of Marimekko fabric from Finland. So it's just in there, and that's really what I'm working on. So once I finish the Bindweed cardigan from the Making Stories magazine, I am hoping to cast on a summer knit. And it is being housed in this beautiful bag, Harrington bags. She makes these wonderful sort of Japanese rice bags, which is right now misbehaving. And I have two of her bags, and this one is kind of a more summery version that I have. And this was the bag that I chose to go along with my project because it kind of matches. I got myself as kind of, I'm going to call this an early birthday present, because I think this is going to be a birthday cast on. My birthday is this month. It's on the 28th, at the end of this month. And I bought myself a sweater quantity of Quince & Company Kestrel. I have wanted to knit with Quince & Company Kestrel for eons. What has felt like eons. Every time I've been in a shop that has had it, I have picked up multiple skeins. I could never decide on a color. And then I somehow settled on this yellow, which is called yarrow, like the flower. And I have bought enough here to make the Ellery sweater by Elizabeth Doherty. when that came out, I think about a year ago. I think it was a year ago, and at most 2 years ago. Time has sort of become this rather nebulous thing these days, it seems. As soon as it came out, I thought, I really love that sweater. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a yoke construction with a slip stitch detail on the yoke and sort of a loose fitting sort of summer sweater. And it was knit in Quince & Company Castrell, I'm quite sure. So I have gotten myself some of this, and we'll be casting that on next. I haven't started swatching it yet, so we'll see. I hope to do that this week, actually, and get that going. Yeah, and speaking of swatches, I've also swatched a couple of other things that I just wanted to show you. Now this one is a silly swatch because I pulled it off the needles because I needed the needles for something else. I showed you that I had gotten about a bunch of yarn from Roots and Rain. I got 2 sweater quantities, one in this gray called Perfect Storm and another one in Logwood. And this is her Storm DK base. So this is a beautiful, beautiful yarn, I have to say. It is a Corriedale Merino Cross. It is, I believe, fully Canadian yarn. And it is a non-superwash yarn that Donna from Roots and Rains carries. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful yarn, I have to say. And so I started swatching. I don't know what I'm going to make with this. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a cardigan. That I do know. And so I just started swatching with this on 4mm needles just to see how it knit up. I think I'm getting about a 22 stitch gauge, but I haven't even counted that. I just wanted to try it out immediately. The other thing that I was swatching was with the Nutiden yarn. You'll recall that I got some yarn from Nutiden. I showed you, and there was this colorway, which is the Sinne, which is a very sort of, it's coming across a little bit more orange than in real life, but it's this sort of kind of reddish cinnamony color. I got myself some Shibui mohair in this colorway. I cannot remember what it's called, but when I actually cast on, I will tell you to go with it. And I was swatching just to see what this yarn would knit up like, because I had no sense of what it would be like. So I did this swatch. I started here using 4mm needles of 1 strand of the Nutiden and 1 strand of mohair. And then I actually cast off, and then I thought, no, I'm just going to pick up the stitches and do a little bit with a smaller needle. So this is with 3.5, and this is with 4mm needles. And it's definitely sort of a nicer, loftier feeling with the 4mm needles, and it's definitely more dense with the 3.5mm needles. So yeah, I really, when I first got this yarn, when I bought the yarn, I thought I'm going to make a vest with it. But as I was swatching, I thought I don't really see a vest in this somehow. But I don't know what I see. And I gotta be honest, I think I see a ranunculus with this particular yarn. I have other colorways and they will become something else, but somehow I've wanted to have a red ranunculus for a while, and seeing how this knits up and how lofty it is, I thought this could be a really nice ranunculus. So I haven't completely made that decision yet, but that seems to be what I am leaning towards right now with this one as I swatch with it. So when I decided that I would not use this beautiful yarn from Alley Cat Yarns that I had gotten for the Bindweed, that I was going to do the knitting for olives, I thought, okay, I'm going back to my original plan with this to make the Elton. And I wanted to use mohairs that I have here at home, and I started swatching. So and this is another one where I just pulled it off the needles. First I had swatched here with the mohair, which makes a beautiful color, but I realized that I wasn't going to use that for the bindweed. So then I started striping it with a couple of different mohairs that I have here at home. So this is a gray that I have, and this is another gray that I have. And as I was swatching it, I realized I don't like either of those grays with this gray, because they created sort of, first of all, this is too stripy, it's too light. I didn't like that. But this one, which was the Knitting for Olive Gray that I actually double stranded it here with, I don't think it captures it quite on the screen, but this has got a slight greeniness to this, and that one has a slight purpliness to it. And I was like, I just don't really like how they look together. So I wrote to, where is it now? I wrote to Melissa of Alley Cat Yarns, and I said, do you ever dye mohair? And she said, funnily, I'm just thinking about that. I said, you know, because I'm trying to swatch with different mohairs and I'm just not finding a combination that I like, you know. And she said, well, give me a week. And so I was like, oh, okay. She said, because I've actually been thinking about dyeing up some mohair and I have some here to try out. So why don't I dye it up? So I said, great, I'd be happy to buy the skeins from you. And she said, give me a week. And then I wrote her a week later. I said, hey, how have your dyeing experiments gone? And she said, they're in the mail. So she sent me, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful, these 2 skeins of a mohair silk blend. It is 70% mohair, 30% silk to go with this. And so it's going to be a beautiful match. So this I hope to cast on relatively soon as well, to have the Elton cardigan by Joji Locatelli. I've wanted that cardigan since it came out, and I think that this will just be a beautiful, beautiful blue-gray cardigan. And I've wanted more cardigans in my life, so it looks like I'm finally getting around to making a few more. So thank you so much, Melissa. I don't know if Melissa is planning on carrying mohair in her shop on a regular basis. Sorry, there's a teenager in the kitchen, in case you hear some noises. But I think she enjoyed the process of dyeing the mohair. I remember her comment saying that it wasn't as finicky as she thought it would be. And it certainly is extremely beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to casting that on. We're having a very hot summer, so I have been finding it a little bit difficult, and well, not even summer, but also late spring. I have been finding it a little bit difficult to knit on the Bindweed at times because it's just too hot, and I need to find myself a cool place to do it. So we'll see what kind of a summer we continue to have. A friend of mine had also, a local friend, had also found, because her husband had given her a gift certificate to, he thought it was a shop, but it's actually not a mill, but they are a distributor of yarns. But they also sell to the public. So she shared with me some of the yarns that she got. She sent me 2 skeins of this yarn that she'd gotten from this provider. I believe they're somewhere in Quebec, and they have mostly Canadian yarns, but they also have some British breeds, but they're really meant to be a distributor. And she said, this yarn is like, it's very, very rustic. And I'm like, I'm really curious. So she sent me 2 skeins. This one is actually a 80% wool nylon blend, which I hope to turn into socks. And this one is 100% wool. And I can't remember the name of the place. I'll put it down here. They are, I think, trying to get into the market of selling to individuals as well, but I think they're used to selling sort of more wholesale. And the prices are incredibly reasonable. So, so she sent these 2 to me, and so I am planning on making some socks. I have a friend who would like some very, very rustic socks, so I'm thinking about making some for her out of these, and possibly for myself as well. So thank you, Rachel. This is really, really awesome, and I'm very, very intrigued by this. So, and then the last couple of things were Kelly of Knit Swag, who very kindly gave me this mug and gave you guys a wonderful, discount code last time. Also sent me this wonderful Knitter's graph paper, which I'm very excited about. So this is actually graph paper that is meant for knitters. So if you want to plot out color work, you can do it using this and actually color in the stitches so that you can see exactly how your color work is going to play with actual stitches. So it's very, very cool. And she has this for sale in her shop. And she also sent me some beautiful fiber tags using the same motif that she had used on the mug. She used on these knitting tags. So you can, and it has on the back the fiber content and the care and who's made by. So if you make a hand knit item for somebody, you can attach this onto them so that they have some information about the content as well. And they're all using the same motif, but in different colors. And yeah, so thank you so much, Kelly. These are really, really wonderful. I think we had originally talked, I had wanted to get some of the graph paper, and then she just sent it to me. So I know that Kelly had wanted to give you guys another discount code, but I forgot to contact her yesterday before podcasting. So I'll be contacting her after podcasting, and what I'm going to do is put the discount code here for you guys so that you can see it, and I'll also mention it in the show notes. So if you're interested in getting yourself a mug or getting yourself some graph paper or some of the tags or any of the other items that Kelly's got in her shop, you can go ahead and use the discount code. And I'll put down also when it's valid till, because usually there's a time period. All right. So thanks again, Kelly. I'm looking forward to, I've never done my own color work, and this is inspiring me to try that. And here is her card, which is also a magnet. So let's move on to some of the questions that you guys posted in the last, from the last episode. Thank you again for all the questions and the comments as well that you guys posted. And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, if you have a question that pops in your mind, feel free to add it this time and I'll add it to the list. I'm always happy to answer questions. And yeah, so some of the questions that I'll answer today. One of the questions was about, well, actually this appeared a few times. One of the questions was, how many languages do I speak? And do I need this for my job? Which kind of goes hand in hand with another question, which was that the person would like to hear more about my day job. So I've always had a love for languages. I've probably told you this before, but I was actually born in Finland. My mother is Finnish and my father was Turkish. And we spoke English at home, but I would spend my summers in Finland, and I was sent to immersion here where I studied in English and French. And I always really liked languages, and eventually started studying Spanish in high school. So I would say that obviously I speak English, but I also speak French, and I speak French. I used to speak French daily at work. The job that I'm in now, which I've been in for the last year and a half, I have less of an opportunity to speak French, unfortunately. I'm in a more Anglophone environment, but I do speak French. I studied in English and French in what they call immersion here in school, and lived in Montreal for a while. So my French is quite good. And I started studying Spanish in grade 11 in high school, and then ended up doing part of my degree in linguistics and Spanish literature, and lived in Spain for 4 years. So my Spanish is pretty good as well. We used to speak Spanish more at home. We actually speak less Spanish these days. but we've been trying to up our Spanish again because really I don't have that much of an opportunity to speak Spanish. And then I also speak Finnish, although Finnish is probably the weakest for me of the 4 languages. I spoke Finnish every summer when I went to Finland, especially with my grandmother and some other relatives, but my closest cousin and my aunt both spoke English. So I'd have to say my Finnish is okay. I can get by, with ordinary conversations, but I do struggle with things that are more complex, that's for sure. So yeah, so there you go. I think those are the 4 languages that I speak. And as I said, I had a degree in linguistics and ended up working in the area of language assessment for the federal government for years. The federal government, and I think I've mentioned this, if you've been around for a while, you might remember, to work for the federal government, most positions are bilingual, which means you have to speak English and French to a certain degree, each one to a certain degree, depending on which one's your first language and which one's your second language. So I ended up working in the area of second language evaluation for 21 years, which did evaluation to make sure that people do speak their second language. And I loved that work, but I was there for a rather long time, and I had an opportunity about 1.5 years ago to change jobs. And I moved over to Global Affairs, which is our foreign affairs department here in Canada, and I work in something completely different. I actually work in the area of budgets for missions. So obviously we have missions abroad, people working in embassies in, I think, 178 countries around the world. There is a Canadian presence. And so my team is supporting the missions in their housing abroad. So it is very different from what I was doing before. It was a very, very steep learning curve. I don't come from a budget background, although my team is they're pretty much experts in that area, so I don't need to be. But we also set the what are called the rent ceilings for the people living abroad. So, and that is the area that I'm kind of more adept at in the work, because it's sort of a quality control kind of aspect, and that's what I did in my last job. It was very much related to quality control of the assessment tools and the methodology for assessment and so forth. So I'm sort of more comfortable with that. I was immediately more comfortable with that area of the work, but it was a huge change for me, and I am really enjoying it. There was supposed to be some travel. It's not a job where I would need to travel a lot, but obviously that got canceled for the time being because I got there in January and COVID hit in March. So, we've all been at home since then. So yeah, that's a little bit about the languages and my day job. Now, one other person asked how I am dealing with not traveling. So it's funny that, we suddenly, had all kinds of travel plans and got grounded because of COVID. And, it's funny, but I certainly have had lots of travel fantasies in my mind. But it's kind of been okay not traveling. I am looking forward to traveling, and I suspect that as we get closer to being able to travel in the near future, that we're going to do that. I'll be happy to go to Montreal and Toronto, to be very honest with you. It'll just be nice to be somewhere else. And as much as I love traveling, and I really do love going to different places, that has been something that's been present all my life. Traveling is also quite exhausting. It takes up a lot of energy. It sort of disrupts your daily life, which sometimes is a really lovely thing to happen, but it does take up a lot of energy. And I realized that I didn't want to travel quite as much as I was traveling. So we'll see once COVID is over if I feel the same way. We certainly do have plans, and hoping to travel by next Christmas to go to Uruguay, which I'm very, very much looking forward to. It'll be very nice to see our family down there and to be by the beach. So we'll see if we're able to do it. Obviously, we haven't bought our plane tickets yet. We're waiting to see that everything is, if we're able to travel. It's a plan that we had for a while to go this coming Christmas. So hopefully we can. But it's been a year of getting used to a different kind of life, and it has had its benefits, I must say. I have to tell you that although the whole pandemic caused a lot of stress to a certain extent, our daily life is just much more relaxed without having to commute and drive people to activities. That has actually been quite beneficial, and I have not minded in some ways of simpler life. There are moments that it's been a little tedious, and I'd be itching to get away, but there'll be time for that, I'm sure. Another question that I thought I would answer today, that was actually, it's a very different kind of question. If I could choose someone to hang out with for a day, who would I choose and why? So this is very different from the other questions, which were more about my daily life and so forth. This was an interesting question. And when I first read the question, I automatically thought I would choose a famous person. And the famous person that came to my mind immediately was Ella Fitzgerald, the jazz singer. And she passed away in the 90s. So obviously, this is very hypothetical. But I have had a huge love for jazz music since I was a kid. My mother, at that time, we had LPs, long playing records. Remember those? Which has kind of made a little bit of a comeback. And my mom had a jazz collection of music by Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, Louis Armstrong, as well as some other people, Cleo Lane. And I loved those albums. I listened to them as a little girl. I would put them on and dance around. We had an album by Ella Fitzgerald where she had a male chorus, one of her earlier albums, and I just loved listening to that music. And she was a real idol of mine for many, many years. And so I immediately thought, I want to meet Ella Fitzgerald and spend some time with her and hug her. However, then I thought, but wait a second, why does it have to be a famous person? And I actually thought I would love to spend the day with my father's mother. I never met my grandparents on my father's side. My grandfather died before I was born, and my grandmother died soon after I was born. And I thought, I loved my grandmother so much on my mother's side. And of course I thought about her, but then I thought I never got a chance to meet my grandmother on my father's side. So I think that is somebody that I would very much like to meet and see what she was all about. My father always told me that she was an amazing cook and brought her spices with her everywhere. And so I would love to spend a day with her cooking and seeing all the other things that she loved doing. So that was such a great question. And I think I'd like to put that question out to you. If you could spend your day with somebody, who would you spend it with and why? And I think I'll stop the questions there because that was just such a wonderful, wonderful question. I have to say I pondered it for quite a long time, and it was a lovely, lovely question. So once again, thank you for all of those. And and I'll answer more of them next time. So thank you so much. And happy 50th episode to Little Big Knits. I remember that it was in 2017 that I started the podcast. It was, I believe, the first podcast aired on June 17th or something like that. And here we are, 50 episodes later, almost to the day. It's almost mid-June at this point. And it's been a lovely, lovely experience. I've told you many times how much I enjoy coming back and how much I enjoy the feedback and the connection with you guys. And it's just so much fun. I don't think I would ever want a podcast weekly. There are some weekly podcasts that I love to watch, but it just would never fit in with our family life and our routine and the need to do many other things. But I really do love coming back every few weeks and sharing what I've been up to. So I hope to continue doing that for a while. And I have to say, at this time of the year, there's been a lot of gardening in addition to all of the other stuff that's been going on. Getting our vegetable garden going on, that requires, work. We have an allotment garden, so I have to drive to it. So we go there, a couple of times a week to water, depending on if it's raining. We've had a very dry spring, so I've been going more regularly. We did all our planting. And then, of course, in the summer, we start having more family activities. So I do still hope to find some time to podcast, but it becomes a little bit trickier between family time and life. So I still enjoy coming in about once a month to say hello and share what I've been doing. And thank you to you. I know there are some of you that have been here with me for 50 episodes. So congratulations to you for sticking around. Thank you for sticking around. And some of you who've recently said hello or have joined the podcast, thank you. Thank you for choosing to come and hang out with me every 3 weeks or so. So I will leave you there. I feel like I probably have lots of things I could talk to you about, but I'll stop there. I'll tell you next time, perhaps about some of the books that I've been reading recently, and some other things, and I'll answer more questions next time. Take care, friends. Hope that the spring is treating you well, and I hope you're taking good care of yourself and enjoying some crafting time or some relaxed time. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.